Hey everyone, and welcome to the third part in the reading of Zen of Cubing. For those of you just joining, parts of this book are offensive, so please proceed with caution if you are easily offended. So chapter 8 of this book is just a pretend catalog. It's not going to read very well, so I'm going to be skipping this chapter for this reading. And chapter 9 takes the form of a debate. So for ease of readability or watchability, I'm going to be using this to denote which speakers there are. So hopefully that'll make sense. One is named David and the other Cube. So that should make it a little bit easier to understand. And there's also the narrator, but that's fine. So chapter 9, Squaring Off. Squaring Off, a debate between supply-side cubist David Blockman and Senate Cube Control Subcommittee Chairman Cube Jabitz. The following is a transcript of a nationally televised program. Narrator, welcome viewers to today's debate on squaring off. The federal government of the United States has for some time been aware of the unconscionable existence of the condition of the national cube. Tremendous inequalities exist. No one 9 squares of the same color. In the last 50 years, the federal government has taken drastic measures to correct the situation, all to little appear and avail. The American government, dissatisfied with the result, voted overwhelmingly in the last election to try a different approach to the grave problem. This new approach is known as supply-side cubism. From the administration, we have with us Chief Advocate of Supply-Side Cubism, David Blockman. Thank you, I'm glad to be here. Also with us is a strident critic of supply-side cubism, Cube Javitz. Call me Cube, please. I'm a man of the people and would like to be addressed as such. Very well, gentlemen, let's begin the debate on the question, is supply-side cubism viable approach for restoring the national cube? An opening statement by Mr. Blockman, please. Certainly, the basic idea behind supply-side cubism is that the 6 sides of the cube pursuing their own self-interest will quickly and effectively work towards achieving their own desires. That is to say, each side will be a solid 9 squares of the same color, thus solving the problem of the national cube. To facilitate the process of supply-side cubism, my office has and will continue to remove innovative government regulations and excessive taxation. Thank you, Mr. Blockman. To cube, if you will. Mr. Blockman's thinking is exactly the reason why the federal government became involved and should continue to be involved in regulation of the cube. His laissez-faire attitude to what led to the Great Mix-Up of 1929. And who alive today can forget the disastrous Rainbow Friday? Those events were the direct result of having no realistic regulation of the cube. Or, if you'll excuse me, please, the Great Mix-Up came because the federal government's intervention in the movement of the cube, the government guaranteed a security to the cube that colors could be quickly returned to their proper positions. And this was a promise it couldn't deliver on. The cube didn't know it at the time. It operated with a false sense of security. Science invested colors indiscriminately all over the cube, banking on future returns that the government guaranteed. When it became apparent what was happening, the sides panicked. They spun and twirled and flipped until no one remembered where anything was. Some colors didn't even remember which side was theirs. Had the government made no promises, there'd have never been a problem. We wouldn't be squaring off today. Am I to assume, Mr. Blockman, that you'd have us to return to the days of robber squarins, when one side wouldn't get all of its colors, refused to trade, and thus monopolize the entire cube? Any history textbook will point out clearly that the 19th century robber squarins operated in tandem with the crooked legislators. Hardly a true supply side system. Besides, I'm not talking about absolute elimination of regulations. Your administration has already removed the vast bulk of sensible, decent controls. What's left to protect? The common square, the blockhead in the street? Private interest will protect him. It stands to reason that if each side wants its own color, it will trade to get it. A blue side with a yellow square will trade with the yellow side with the blue square. It's so simple. If it's so simple, then why haven't we seen any of your results? Your office has been at it for over 2 years now. You'll have to remember that we inherited a terrible mess. Your party has been at it for over 50 years. I don't think it improved even one bit during that time. Well, we admit that in our zeal to help the common cube, we perhaps overregulated some areas, such as the requirement that no cube is allowed to have more than 5 squares of its own color, unless all the sides have at least 4 of their own. There's no workable pattern that can go through that stage. All we were trying to do was to guarantee. I don't think that it's the government's place to guarantee fixed numbers of colors per side. That's the cube zone's business. What, have you no compassion for the common cube? I have plenty of compassion, but I think the best way to help them is to let them help themselves. We have to leave them. Certainly, we certainly do. Join us next week for another informative debate of squaring off. But we worked so hard on those regulations. What about all the secretaries we hired to type those rules? We employed a lot of people, and now they're losing their jobs. What about? And Chapter 9 cuts off. The Cuber's Anthology of Literature. Double, double, toy and trouble. Fuses burn and tempers bubble. Cool it with a chance to solve. Our world upon the cube revolves. The world of the cuber does indeed revolve upon the cube. How could it be otherwise? The cube has found a niche in every aspect of society: history, politics, religion, health, and science. These subjects are the meat and potatoes of life. They represent the cold, hard facts. But the cube, that ever amazing cube, also reaches beyond the world of technical and philosophical absolutes and into the world of imagination and fantasy. It's a world that comes to life whenever a cuber puts his cube aside, reaches over, and opens a book. It's the world of cuber literature. Sadly, there's a roadblock preventing many from entering this world. The uniformed cuber, as well as a surprising number of the ununiformed, is faced with a maddeningly disparate plethora of cuber literature and simply doesn't know where to begin reading. It is indeed a perplexing situation and has driven many a cuber already disposed to a unique brand of mulokinous nonlinear gestalt thought process, another roadblock to virtual literacy. In our interest to widen the intellectual horizons of all cubers, we've composed this anthology of cuber fiction. It's a sample reader that covers some of the best works from a number of different genres. Some stories will prove satisfying, while others might leave you as unfulfilled as an unsolved cube. Every cuber has his or her own unique taste. It is our hope that you at least read these selections and give them a fair chance. If we can at least interest you to look for more reading matter in one or two genres, then we will consider our mission a success. We have helped you break through the roadblocks and escaped the wonderful world of cuber literature. Have a passport, we'll travel. Cuber fairy tales. Some stories will live in the hearts of cubers for all time. The fairy tales their parents would recite to them in early cuberhood are a prime example. Who can forget the story of Goldilocks and the Three Cubes, Little Red Riding Cube, or Sleeping Cuber? We certainly can't. For those of you who led a deprived childhood, as well as those of you who'd like to relive moments of the past, we've chosen to share the following classic: Goldilocks and the Three Cubes. Once upon a time, in a land of giant forests and babbling brooks, a little girl decided to take a big walk. Her name was Goldilocks, though she was a nice little girl. She suffered from a terrible character flaw. She was not a cuber. Why? She didn't even have a cube of her own. That explains why she was out for a walk when she should have been at home, like every good little boy and girl working on her cube. Goldilocks walked and soon became tired of walking and was very hungry. Oh, she exclaimed, I do wish I had something to eat, and I also wish I had something fun to do. Almost as an answer to her wish, she came upon a square little house. Filled with anticipation and yearning, she rushed up to the house and knocked on the door. But there was no answer. Dear me, uttered Goldilocks, whatever shall I do? There is no one home to help me. At length, Goldilocks decided to enter the house and help herself to whatever food and activities were available. She reasoned that if the owner was home, he or she would certainly invite her to do so. No sooner had Goldilocks crossed the threshold when the delicious aroma of fresh hot porridge wafted across her senses. Yummy! Exclaimed Goldilocks with glee. She ran into the kitchen and saw 3 bowls of porridge sitting on the table. She sat down at the first bowl and tried a bite. The bowl was very tiny and the porridge was very hot. Ouch! She cried as the porridge burnt her lip. This is too hot for my fancy. She moved to the next chair to test the second bowl of porridge. It was a little larger than the first bowl and held just the right amount of porridge a little girl like Goldilocks should eat for one meal. It wasn't too hot either. Still, after taking one bite of porridge, Goldilocks couldn't help looking at the next and last bowl. She decided she'd give it a try and moved down to the next chair. It was a huge bowl of porridge and was actually very cold, lumpy, and sticky. Yum, yum, yummy, shouted Goldilocks. My favorite. She quickly ate every last drop and even licked the bowl clean. Now for some fun, mused little Goldilocks. She left the table and began to roam the house in search of an activity. It was a very bare house and seemed as though there were no games to play. At long last she came upon 3 cubes. Each one had been solved. Normally, Goldilocks would never have bothered to play with a cube, but in this instance there was quite simply nothing else left to do. Oh, all right, muttered Goldilocks reluctantly. Just this once. The first cube was very small indeed. She fumbled and fidgeted with it for a moment or two before tossing it on the floor. That cube is too small, said Goldilocks, though in fact it wasn't too small. She picked up the next cube. It was larger than the first. Again, Goldilocks fumbled and fidgeted with the cube, only to finish by throwing it on the floor. It's too medium for me, said Goldilocks, though in fact it wasn't too medium for her at all. The third and final cube was very large. Goldilocks twisted and turned it parts about, but soon tossed it on the floor. It's too big for me, said Goldilocks, though in fact it wasn't too big for her. Leaving 3 terribly scrambled cubes on the floor, Goldilocks decided she was tired and needed a nap. She saw 3 beds. The first was big and hard, the second was just the right size and softness, the third was very tiny and almost as soft as porridge. She slept in the third bed, and her feet hanging over the edge. Not too long after Goldilocks fell asleep, the three cubers who owned the house came back. The Papa Cuber looked at the Mama Cuber who held the baby Cuber in her arms. "Something's not right," said the Papa Cuber. The Mama Cuber looked worried and the baby Cuber began to whimper. They looked in the kitchen and saw that someone had eaten all of their old, spoiled porridge that they were going to throw in the garbage. "Somebody's going to be very sick," said Mama Cuber. The Cubers then looked in their bedroom and saw that a little golden-haired girl had fallen asleep on the baby Cuber's bed. "It's obvious what happened," said the Papa Cuber. "This little girl has taken a walk and satisfied her hunger and weariness at our home. I don't mind at all. I'm glad she's taken care of." The Mama Cuber mentioned something about hoping the little girl didn't get sick on the baby Cuber's bed. Suddenly, baby Cuber began screaming and crying. The Mama and Papa Cuber looked and soon began screaming and crying too. Someone had scrambled their cubes and left them lying on the floor. Goldilocks heard the clamor and jumped up. "Have you done this to our cubes?" asked the Papa Cuber. Goldilocks replied that she had. The Mama Cuber looked at her in horror. "What kind of Cuber are you?" Goldilocks replied that she wasn't any kind of Cuber at all. Upon hearing this, the Papa Cuber wanted to throw her out, but the Mama Cuber interfered. "You poor, poor little girl, is this true?" The Papa Cuber realized the poignancy of this moment and threw his recklessness to the wind. "Yes," answered Goldilocks. "Look at the cubes. You see, I can't solve them. I don't even know where to begin because of my inabilities. I've spent my life trying to avoid contact with cubes and cubers, but this time there was nothing else to do and I was alone, so I played with them. Oh, I know I shouldn't have. Now I feel terrible. I'm reminded that I'm stupid and ignorant in the ways of the cubing, not to mention having scrambled someone else's cubes. Oh, boo-hoo," Goldilocks wept. The Mama Cuber and the Papa Cuber didn't even need to talk about it. "Little girl, do not be sad. We can teach you some valuable tricks in cube solving. We can help you overcome your handicap." Goldilocks stopped stippling long enough to look up at the nice, gentle cubers. "Do you really mean that? Oh, but I couldn't. That's not fair to you." "Really," said Papa Cuber, "we'd like to. After all, you've eaten our old porridge and slept on our bed. The least you can do is accept some advice on cubing." And Goldilocks did. And only one day she learned how to solve the cube. She went home and bought one, and to this day is having fun with it. No longer does she do silly things like take long, aimless walks. The end. Alright, so science fiction. For the adolescent cuber, no other form of fiction has proven as popular as science fiction. It is also popular with many mature, educated cubers. There are also many levels of science fiction. Some appeal only to adolescents, some to those well-versed in scientific knowledge, and others to those interested in avant-garde writing, which is often very successful with SF themes. We think that the following selection will prove popular to all types of cuber science fiction readers as well as the general public. I have no cube and I must solve. Our planet was very peaceful and beautiful. In many ways, it still is. There are green mountains capped with snow, rolling valleys and plains, mighty oceans and beautiful skies. We've always had these things and probably always will. For most of our history, we've enjoyed our blessings and relative peace. Oh, sure, we've had little wars, social unrest, and whatnot, but who hasn't? They come and go, just often enough to remind us how lucky we are to have a relatively peaceful and beautiful world. Some things have changed. Our world is not in the peaceful place it once was. Some fear the world will not stay beautiful. Let me tell you how this came to be. Not too many years ago, a spaceship from another planet landed on our world. I was the governor of the province in which they landed, so I was delegated as the official ambassador to the aliens. The first moment I met them, I feared they would be trouble for my planet. These aliens are not like you and I. One needs only to look at their face to read their emotions and their thoughts. Why did I not heed these warnings? If only I had, you and I would be happier today. Our children would be happier, and also the aliens and their species would certainly be much happier. I should have sent them away. But I didn't. I overlooked the greed and lust, the almost addictive need that was written across their faces when they first looked at us. Indeed, I helped organize parties and parades, discuss trade agreements and cultural exchanges. As we did not yet have the interplanetary space travel, the aliens were especially adamant in pursuing the possibility of building numerous spaceports over all of our planet. Now I know why. One day, after a night of selfless partying, I was alone and with the captain of the spaceship. He seemed a kindly man, and I had taken exception to him. There was a certain sorrow in his eyes that no officer or crew member had. He seemed reluctant about the course of his life he had chosen. I asked him about it. "Yes, I am different from the others. I regret that I am, as it would make my task much easier." I inquired further about this task, but he avoided answering by asking a question. "As governor, are you forced to make difficult decisions for the good of your citizens, to satisfy their needs, to do the things you do not like to do?" I was about to reply when he continued sadly, remotely. "I am captain of the ship, but I am omnipotent. I cannot change the course of history. My people have a terrible need, one that is stronger than my ability to control. Apprehensively, I asked him what he was talking about. He merely shrugged his shoulders and walked quietly away. He stopped briefly to add what I was now know was a warning. Perhaps a long vacation, far away, would do you a great deal of good, my friend. Perhaps it would have at that. I did not have to wonder what this long, terrible need of aliens was. It happened quite suddenly. The next morning, the security report that I was given told me that 3 of the humans intoxicated from the previous night parties had cornered one of my close friends, a gentle cube of old age, a genuine chip off the old block. They grabbed this poor cube and twisting, turning, and flipping him, changing every location of his squares. The poor cube's pattern, with a variety of colored squares on each of the 6 sides, were changed. The humans had taken away his identity. What is worse, they had finished him. Each of his 6 sides was a solid uniform color when we found him. In all my years of governmentship, it was the ugliest thing I had ever heard. I didn't have to wait long to hear of the things even worse. Upon questioning the captured humans, I learned that they solved, as they called it, for fun. One fellow sneered at me and revealed that what I had avoided acknowledging for too long. "You stupid cube," he cackled. You think you're so smart? You can move and communicate and think. Cubes on our planet aren't like that, but that doesn't change anything. We're going to solve you, each and every one, and I don't think we can't. You are nothing but a hunk of plastic with a bunch of scrambled colored stickers. I have to leave the room and spend some time alone. Scrambled colored squares? Indeed. Our stickers are organized in a very special manner. No 2 cubes have the same pattern. A cube takes no greater pride than he does in his pattern. To change it is to humiliate a cube, and to change it for mere fun, the humans would have to be destroyed. A spaceship has been successfully toppled from its mooring and could not take off, but the remaining humans had escaped and were rampaging through the small community, solving cubes wherever they went. I saw a small town after they finished. It was pretty in a ghastly sort of way. All the cubes had the sides of the same colors. I could not see where, if one regarded a cube as an inanimate object, there would be no hesitation to solve one, but I had to stop thinking it that way. I questioned the prisoners again, one at a time, in a small room. After seeing the damage the peers had done, I could sacred regard them being more than unthinking inanimate objects. Why do you take such pleasure in solving us? Because it's fun, it's frustrating, it's simple, and it's incredibly difficult. It's exciting when you succeed. It seems more far away, and yet it makes us feel good. Make order out of chaos. I'd do it again if I wasn't tied up. You were planning to enslave the entire planet, weren't you? Yeah, but that captain, he was too slow and careful. We couldn't wait. We had to solve. There were so few cubes left on our planet, and so many people. We were going to ship you talking cubes back home by the millions, and we will, yet you just wait. At that point, I succumbed to what had been a growing desire. Several weeks later, I led a war party that cornered the last of the remaining humans. After the initial skirmish, I found myself chasing the captain in a dead-end ravine. He realized he was trapped and turned to face me. I couldn't stop them. God knows I tried. Don't play with me, Captain. I know what you were going to do. You were going to make slaves of us and my fellow cubes. He hung his head. Do not feel shame, I said. I felt sorry for the poor man. He looked surprised. I understand why your fellow humans want to solve cubes. I think if I were a cruel cube who hadn't been trained as a governor to serve his constituents, I would enjoy solving cubes also. I have been tempted to finish off the occasional almost solved victim your people hastily left from time to time. Sadly, I can see many of my fellow cubes are anxious to try solving up other cubes too. You have brought us a great, terrible knowledge, Captain. Now I must see that we rebuild your spaceship and build even more like it, and go to your world and take your people. He looked at me with horror in his eyes. What are you saying? I would like to solve something, but I can't claim to know other cubes as my own. But I can claim you, since you are a dangerous alien. You mean? Yes, I have no cube, and I must solve. He didn't even scream, and I began twisting his arms. So the next story is Cube Erotica. I am going to be skipping that story because I think that's just a little bit too much to be on my channel. So we're going to be moving on to the next story. The Cube Humor Sampler. We offer an explanation instead of a selection. We've decided against including cube humor of any sort in this anthology. We felt that such humor is degrading not only to cubes but to cubers as well. It seems to be quite the rage to make fun of various aspects of cubing, particularly in the form of cheap, tacky parodies. Although it is popular writing, we feel it has no purpose other than to humiliate, and certainly take no intelligence to write or to read. Hemingway once compared writing parodies to urinating on a bathroom wall. He preferred the latter. We think the man had a point. We urge you to not read cube humor, especially parodies. We think there are better forms of cube literature. For instance, the next selection, Shakespeare on Cubes, represents some of the best material ever written on the subject of cubes and cubing, and it's enjoyable. Shakespeare on Cubes. Perhaps no other literature offers such astute comments on cubes and cubers than does the great unparalleled William Shakespeare. It is doubtful that one man will add significantly to Shakespeare's insight. The man wrote dozens of plays and sonnets, and all of them are considered classics in every aspect. Sadly, we can offer you a few offer but we can but offer you a few of the more famous passages from his works. If you are inspired to read more of his works, you can easily find them in any library or bookstore. Many universities offer courses in Shakespearean cubologies that you might also find beneficial. To cube or not to cube, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the dread and anger of outrageous frustration, or to take action against this block of trouble, and by confronting, solve it. To try to fail, no more, and with success to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural error. The cube is heir to 'tis victory, devoutly to be wished, to try to solve, perchance to be confused. Aye, there's the rub, for in that paradox of confusion what scorn may come. Macbeth soliloquy. To cube or not to cube, creeps in this silly place from day to day, to the last light of evening night, and all our yesterdays have taunted cubers. On their ways to be dreary, out, full cube, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player. The twist twirls and frets his hours upon the cube, and then is left unsolved. It is a toy, sold by an idiot, full of a challenge and furies, signifying nothing. Romeo's pleas. O solution, solution, where art thou, solution? Defy the cube and refuse its pride, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn to counsel, or I'll be no longer a cuber. 'Tis but the squares that are my enemy. Thou are thyself just within grasp. What's solving 'tis not orange, nor red, nor green, nor blue, nor any parts. Without the whole match, oh, be some color. What is a solution? That which we call a cube, by any other name would cause equal rage, and now were it not for illusion perfection which is own, yield fond and doff thy mystery, and for that answer which is no part of me, solve all my cube. Existential Cubism. Are you a cuber who's into heaviosity? If so, the literature of existentialism could be for you. Though the literature of this philosophical movement is not the most entertaining or thrilling literature available, it can present a challenge to the mind that is almost as satisfying to comprehend as a cube to solve. Many readers will read and reread stories of novels of existential cubism, trying to decipher their meaning. Some succeed, some fail. But in the world of existential cubism, does it really matter if one understands, or is it important that one merely asks the questions? If you are intrigued by puzzles of existential cubism, inquire at a university library for more reading material. Our selection is a very short abridgment of Frank Kafka's 3,000-page novel, Looking Through a Glass Cube. Looking through a glass cube. I sit here in the late night staring at my cube. I notice oil in my lamp is running low, and I remind myself to fill it in the morning. Such trivialities, and I wonder, does the cube know of such trivialities? Does it care if the lamp is low on oil? In my chair, locked in this fat, obese body that smells like sweating pork flesh, I continue to look at the cube. As squares could talk, I look at the cube and try to peer inside. Does it have a soul, a mind? Does it think? Is it repulsed by my appearance as much as I am? Does it shudder when I touch it? Bah! The ramblings of a fat, misunderstood poet in the late night, as seen by the light of a dim lamp. I am a fool. Still, I look into the cube. Certainly it is looking into me. Does it understand the cruelties of life better than I? Can it appreciate pain and sorrow and suffering, or is that the realm of mortal flesh alone? The morning light shines into my eyes. I must have fallen asleep in the chair. It is so hard to move when one is a giant flesh and the night is dark. But wait, tell me, am I dreaming? Tell me, is this a cruel hoax my mind is forging upon itself? Am I outside of my body looking at myself? Is this a release of promised by death to waste eternity staring at the fetid corpse? But no, the body moves, its breath. Now I understand. I am inside the cube. I am trapped within that box of mystery, that idiot savant, that child's game, a philosopher's touchstone, the cube. It is strange. I am a victim of an experience beyond the range of human understanding, and yet there is no bombshells, no trumpets blaring, no ceremonies, no gossip behind the scenes. My exchange has been done simply and quietly. I am inside the cube for better or worse, and what is inside my body, old body already, have accepted the whims of destiny. Its eyes open wide, the faceless gesticulations, the teeth are coated with phlegm and mucus. Still, the face smiles at me, the body stands and roars with laughter, and suddenly knowledge fills me like light filling darkness. Trapped within my body is the spirit of this cube in which I am now encased. It is so obvious that a young child could understand it. It happened after all. It happened after I fell asleep, after pursuing the possibility of the cube existing as a spiritual entity, after I wondered if squares could talk, what stories they would tell. Yes, yes, it is a grand, glorious joke, and I laughed silently along with my old, despicable body and the spirit of the cube. For certainly it wondered the same. We have each been granted our wish as easily as a magic genie would grant its master. We have become the answer to our own questions. I stop laughing abruptly. Life is a cruel prankster, I remind myself. Why should life be obliging to anyone, let alone a poet who scratches his dribbling lines in a tattered notebook? How long has it been since the last day? A week, a year? I have lost track of all time. I seem to have even lost all comprehension or concern for time. My old body, laughing and roaring, walked out of the house that day. I should have understood sooner why it had stopped laughing when I had. On the way out, it shouted to my mother upstairs, "Tell Nadia that I am bound for Caspian to embark on a career as a sailor." The Caspian, a sailor? I did not understand him, and I knew for all certainty that my poor darling Nadia would never understand. After sitting for days, Nadia picks me up and sits in the same chair I once sat. She seems happy, happier than I had ever known her. I do not allow myself to consider the justification of this joy. After all joy is shallow. Only sorrow is capable of depth, and even then only on rare occasions. She spins my sides about and makes me feeble attempts to solve the mystery, combining equal colors on all sides. Still, the efforts are genuine in bringing her happiness. Suddenly, I am incredulous at my own feelings. I am excited. I am on the verge of a great discovery, a verge that I have seen prior only from a distance while immersed in a great genuine pain and suffering. I am on the verge of total understanding. Oh, Nadia, do not stop, I beg you. All the mysteries of life are taking shape. From whence do we come, and for what purpose do we proceed? We have why we not why have we not been told the answers? Why does the sound of wind blowing through the leafless trees of late autumn bring water to my eyes? Why must the greater workings of the mind be crouched in pain? These mysteries are becoming clear. I can see an answer looming in the distance, and with each move of my cube that the innocent Nadia executes, the answer looms ever closer. The wisdom of ancients is within arm's length. Oh, only in the most arranged flights of fancy Sexualization. I considered the possibility of becoming one with such knowledge. It is too much for me. But no, it isn't too much, I had thought. My psyche could not obtain omniscience. But I was wrong. Ah, but what could be a feeble poet comprehend? Now I am a cube. Life itself is within my grasp. Ah, Nadia, your sleek hands, the color of fresh goat's milk. Are you giving me more pleasure than they ever gave me in our bed? Already I know what it does not matter, how fast you turn my sides and align the colors, for all knowledge is timeless. If I could talk, if I could talk to you, my Nadia, my little bleeding lamb, I would tell you the immensity of my love, not the love of my old self, but the love of my new spirit, the one bathed in knowledge, if I could but share this. But wait, the door opens, and Nadia sets me back on the table, nearly solved, but still very unsolved. She rushes to meet a tall, dark, handsome man in the uniform of a commissioner. He takes her in her arms, and she swoons beneath the relentless pressure of his lips and his hand. I am crestfallen. But there is one more. On the divan, across from the very chair I once sat, this mindless servant of the state takes my Nadia and has her way with her. I have been cheated. My old body leaves for some reckless adventurism in the Capsian Sea, and my Nadia, my faithful Nadia, my one pillar of strength against all sorrows and pain. And more, she has her way with him. Her wildly gyrating body does more than I thought I had possible. Certainly, considering the dimensions of my old body, some of these things were physically impossible, but nonetheless, she had never perspired while making love with me, I'll have you know. Later, her lovers pick me up and laughs. With four moves, she solves me and tosses me aside to again take Nadia 4 moves. I am filled with all the answers to questions. I am the knowledge of the universe, yet I am not thrilled. I am saddened for what use is all this knowledge from the one I love is riding atop another man. I have seen eternity in heaven, and they have slapped me in the face and reminded me that I am forever unworthy of such knowledge. My optimism and proud bearing shall be punished. I can see that it must be. I shall live forever in this cube, a plaything of the idols of idle minds. The oil in the lamp runs out and darkness descends. I recall that I did not fill it on the eve of my exchange. It is better that I did not know, for now I cannot see the antics of my Nadia is engaged in. I can only hear her laugh and scream, and I am reminded of the laugh given by my old body as it left the house that first morning. He was happy, finally, to have changed places with a wretched poet and to no longer see life through a glass cube. All right, that's where I'm going to be leaving off this part. There's still more to this chapter, but my voice is getting a little tired, so we'll be picking up with Cube Mysteries next video. And that should be the last part with only a few chapters to go. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.